Friday, this past Friday, Veterans Day, would have been my daddy's 91st birthday. He was Sid Challenger's generation. We lost him 7 years ago, and I miss him each day. Now, you get a version of him each day because I look just like him, except for my size. He was tiny in stature, but large in dignity. I learned so much from my father. He looked out for people who didn't have what he had. And when he died, the fact it was 2 weeks, remember, he died right after you all called me, George. I'll never forget, Ellen and George sent me a basket of pears. And I thought, these are good people. They remember food right in the middle of my grief. But when my daddy died, hundreds showed up for his funeral. Our visitation, which is what you call it in the South, you have your visitation. It was supposed to be 2 hours. 5 hours later, we got to sit down and eat. People I'd never heard of showed up. They stood in this long line for hours to tell me, to tell my siblings, to tell my mother something that my daddy had quietly done to make their life better. Your daddy gave me a job. Your daddy gave me food. Your dad visited me in the hospital. I never knew Dad even went to the hospital. Your daddy took care of my family. Over and over again, we heard this. My daddy worked hard every day. He would be up before the sun, and he'd watch the 11 o'clock news to get the weather after he'd fallen asleep in the chair. Work never stopped on our 1,000-acre farm, and he provided everything we needed, plus some. But one of the most important lessons I learned from Bob Smith is when things got hard, he worked harder. When our herd of cattle, when I was a junior in high school, got pneumonia and died in the middle of winter, when the hail rained down and ruined our field of crops, when the combine harvester took his 2 first fingers off, when the tractor flipped on the road and almost killed him, when bankruptcy came during the farm crisis of the 80s, Bob Smith did not give up. He worked harder. When we lost our farm that was in our family for generations, my daddy, at the age of 60, took a low-level job 2 hours away at the University of Kentucky, where he had graduated eons before, summa cum laude. And he learned a new trade as a carpenter. He worked harder. And he learned to create beautiful furniture from the wood off that farm. And if you go into any of the 4 Smith children homes today, that's our furniture that my daddy made with his 2 hands minus 2 fingers. When things got hard, Daddy worked harder. It seems this past week has been hard on many of us, on our whole country. We are facing major changes, both in our country and here in our congregation. There's a tug on our hearts between the church of the past and the church of the future. Our society has found that a scab has been ripped off and exposed the rawness of the divide between a country of the past and a country of the future. These are hard times. People are scared. People are defensive. People are raw. People are lost. All week I talked to kids in our church, kids you know, kids we love, who are afraid. Afraid because they have seen and heard stories of harassment and attacks, and they don't know what to do with this. Would it happen to them? Stories that I've followed on the news of a Muslim woman on the street had her hijab ripped off, her headscarf, and then told herself to strangle herself with it. Dozens of boys grabbed girls inappropriately in the hall to school in Milwaukee. Swastikas were painted in school bathrooms and on billboards saying, "Make America white again." Students and adults yelled at Latinas to go home, "You Mexican wetbacks." And a few of the protesters, instead of honoring the tradition of a nonviolent protest, became violent instead, defeating their very purpose. The N-word and gay slurs were spat hatefully at strangers. And the one that really got me was when kids yelled "white power" in the middle of the school lunch hour. Things are hard, so we must work harder. Who we are, what we believe as a church, as people, has become even more important. Our vision as a congregation is even more needed. And with the climate of the world the way it is, it makes our new venture that we are undertaking, possibly selling our building to the Bridgeport Islamic Community Center, and then partnering with them in 10 outreach programs, it makes that even more critical, more important. It will not only be a business transaction, it will stand for peace and dignity and cooperation and respect. Our job, our theology, our purpose just got laser sharp. It just got more focused and, frankly, more urgent. We must stay strong. We must stand up for those who are forgotten or forsaken. We must build relationships with those who are afraid. We must build relationships for those who make us afraid. We must build, not tear down. And we must also refuse to reflexively recoil ourselves back into a dark corner. Doing nothing is not an option. We must refuse to become the thing we hate, but rather, as Gandhi said, be the change we want to see in the world. We must work harder. I told these kids this week that I am thankful that here in this congregation we have each other. We have white and brown and black. We have legal and undocumented. We got folks with more money than God, and we got folks that barely have something to eat today. We got old and young. Becky Craig's about to pop. Oh, hi, Becky. She might run out. That's why she's sitting in the back. That baby could come any minute. Thanks be to God. And we just lost Sid. We got everything. We have all sorts of opinions. You just ask us. But we have each other. And we have what matters most, people. We have kindness, justice, equality, diversity. We include everybody. That's why we're a little nuts, I think. That's what makes us different and special. And I hope that we follow love as our guide and will let love continue to guide us. But I'm telling you this, friends, we can't do sweet Hallmark love anymore. We got to love more fiercely. We have to speak more clearly. We have to stand taller. We have to be better. We have to turn anger into justice, fear into hope, and we have to work harder than we've ever imagined to build the kind of world we imagine. We cannot abdicate this to someone else. Here in this spot, it is our job. So where do we get that strength? The same place we always get it. Our loving, strong God. We have come this far, but we have not come by ourselves. God has brought us this far, and God will see us through. Do you hear the story from the Exodus? Moses is busy up dealing with God, getting the 10 Commandments. I mean, carving those things in the rock didn't take, overnight. It took time. But the people got restless. They wanted change, so they built a golden calf, something shiny and new to hang their trust on. And they started worshiping the golden calf instead of worshiping the one God. God sent Moses right down that mountain and challenged them. Did this calf bring you out of slavery? No. I brought you this far, God says, and I will see you through. I did not bring you out here in the desert to abandon you. And God will not abandon us. And then you can fast forward to our New Testament lesson. Jesus and the disciples go out on the Sea of Galilee. Sunday afternoon, drive onto the sea, right? A storm comes up. I love this part. Jesus is asleep in the boat. You ever felt like that? Storms are raging around you, and Jesus is fast asleep. Thank you, Jesus. And the disciples get anxious. They're afraid they're going to be torn apart by the storm. Jesus, save us. He's like, really? And he opens one eye. Oh, I need a cup of coffee. These people exhaust me. You can just hear the bubble in his head, can't you? He woke up, clearly irritated. He goes, really? You bothered me for this? He's irritated they did not trust. He's irritated that their fear got the best of them. So what does Jesus do? He takes care of it. He stretches his arms out into the storm and says, peace, be still. And then you can imagine the part of the story that's left out. He turns to his disciples and said, next time, take care of this yourself. But also, I did not bring you out into the waters of life to have you drown. I have brought you this far, and I will see you through. Jesus longs to calm our storms. Time after time in my life, Jesus has reached in to my chaos. And I heard, peace, be still. Will we let Jesus reach into our storm this time? Then will we be Christ's arms that reach into the storm of others who are afraid and scared? Will we reach our arms out to our kids who are afraid? Will we have enough peace in our own hearts to say, it'll be okay. We got you. We didn't bring you this far to drop you now. We didn't bring you this far to drop you now. We will see you safely through. I got an email from one of our newest members who was very upset this week. And she was going on and telling me that, which I appreciate because now you do a lot of pastoral care on email. It's very interesting. And then she wrote this. But you know, Reverend Sara, what's carrying me through? Gratitude that I have found a church family where I can pick myself up and start creating the world I want to live in, alongside others in my church who share a vision for God's kingdom of love and peace. So I want to thank you and God for that. Indeed, we can and we will get through this hard time. But now our prophetic work really begins. building bridges, building hope, standing in solidarity with those the world would reject. Our vision as a church now has an imperative. Our work to build a future as a congregation is now an even sharper focus. United Congregational Church is here for a reason. We may not always worship in this space. We know that.